Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Final Sun channel. As always, I'm super glad to have you guys here. I appreciate talking about this stuff with you, and I hope it helps you guys out as well. Today, we're going to be going over how to play Thor for the average person. This is a kind of build that will not take a whole lot of grinding to do, but will still provide you a whole lot of power so you can play support, DPS, and even tank a little bit with this character. This way you can play with your friends, keep up with everything they're doing, and not struggle in any kind of game mode with Thor. Before I dive down into this, if you find this video to be helpful to you guys, you're doing me a huge favor if you like and subscribe. It shows that you want to support my channel and the content that I create, and while I do enjoy creating it, I always appreciate the extra support. Also turn on your notifications, that way you're notified anytime I post another video. That way you can find some more helpful content to help you build your characters. Now then, let's talk about the best aspects of Thor and why people choose to play him. He is one of the most fun characters in all of Marvel's Avengers, and not just because he has that perk of being able to fly. He plays exactly like how you think he would. He is the God of Thunder, and the most exciting part about playing as this character is using his abilities. He can really do a lot of crowd control, a lot of damage, and just provide additional attack buffs to the characters around him. Just like the other characters, if you grind out a lot and you get a lot of different exotic gear with just the right perks in them, you really can raise the level of this Thor so he plays like a godly character. Today we're going to be going over one of those builds like that so that you can play in the best way possible without doing too much grinding to get to it. I'm only going to feature one exotic gear and mostly epic gear in this build, knowing that you can improve upon it, but you'll be able to get these without taking too much time and you'll be able to compete with the best kind of players. Let me go ahead and give you a little spoiler for how this build's going to be focused. We're going to be focusing on increasing the shock damage that Thor does to his opponents and increasing the speed at which his heroic abilities recharge, because that is the key part to keeping Thor alive and doing as much damage as possible. We're going to look at the skills here to see how we're able to increase the heroic ability speed rate at which they recharge, because if we can get these so that we can continuously keep using his skills, then we're going to be able to carry the rest of our team through any kind of mission we need to do. There is a little bit of leeway in the skills that you can choose to do on your specialty and mastery tab, but I'm going to show you the ones that are essential to make sure you deal the most damage and recharge your heroic meter at the fastest rate. We're going to be going over the specialty tab here first to prepare you to which skills you should pick. So first off going here, we're going to be looking at Asgard's Fortune. This one is pretty essential to the build. If you click it, you have a 50% chance Warrior's Fury skill will drop heroic orbs on their kills. This is super important because when you're staying alive, you're going to want to have this Warrior's Fury skill active as long as possible. It keeps charging your intrinsic bar, giving you electric damage, increasing your critical rate and your damage. So if you can get more heroic orbs to keep using this skill over and over, it's essential. The next one we're going to get is Son of the Elder Gods, which is going to give us a damage boost to our assault special. It increased the whirlwind damage that we're using to hold enemies up in the air and applies 20% cryo. You can change this one depending on the mission you're going into and the gear you have to give you the best damage boost based on the gear specials and the element that's attached to them. Here, I'm using cryo. Let's move over to Rolling Thunder, which will refund 5% of your assault heroic for every kill you get while using God Blast. This is huge because when you're in a huge mob of enemies and you're able to use this special, hold them up in the air for just a minute and then blast them all, you're going to get a lot of your assault heroic back so that you'll have this hopefully charged in just another few seconds. I also have marked Jotunheim's Tempest, which will apply massive cryo damage using the Bifrost Bridge. I use this one in conjunction with Son of the Elder Gods so that if I use either my God Blast or my Bifrost back to back, there's a good chance I'm either going to stagger my enemies and go in for an assassination, or I'm going to freeze them so that they can't defend against my next series of attacks. That cryo damage paired together lowers their defensive ability so that they can't block incoming attacks. The last one I consider essential for this list is Invigorating Bifrost, and this gives you a 5% increase to your heroic orb's effectiveness. This is huge because we're going to build this around dropping heroic orbs and keeping these skills going, so if you can increase how effective they are, it's going to go a long ways. Moving on to the Mastery tab, this is where we're going to get a lot of those heroic orb drops and the lightning damage that's going to accompany almost all attacks we're doing in the game. We're going to focus on keeping our character overcharged and recharging those heroic abilities. Starting off, we're going to click Heroic Charge, and this increases the charge rate of our heroic abilities energy by 1.5% for light attacks and 2% for heavy attacks. And while we're using something like Warrior's Fury and we're staying close to characters, we're going to be beating them down and charging all of our specials at the same time. Then we move over to something to couple with that, the combo damage, where our combo finishers are going to deal 25% more damage. So while we are beating them down, we're also having increased damage for it. And lastly, for this one, we're going to be using the Heroic Takedown Mastery to spawn a Heroic Orb anytime we do a Heroic Takedown. If we slide on over to the Range tab, what we're going to start off with is Impact Explosions. We're doing this one because it causes lightning damage to an area, and if you throw this hammer when you're charging at a bigger villain, you're going to hit them with a lot of lightning and go ahead and get that shock damage started on them. Then we're also going to increase the damage with our critical return here, so that when we throw it, there's a 35% chance when it's coming back, it's going to have critical damage. This is really good when you're fighting drones, as you throw it and quickly pull it back, and it's going to hit targets on its way back with that critical damage. And then for quality of life, I also picked Speed Burst because I have some gear that increases my intrinsic energy while I'm flying, and this just allows me to move around the map much quicker. This one's just for fun, it's not going to increase your damage or anything, but I think it's essential just to enjoy the character. Now we're going to go over to Intrinsic Ability, where we're going to get a lot of that lightning damage. If we click Ionic Bolts first here, we're going to add lightning damage anytime we kill someone while using Odin Force. This applies to using Overcharged as well. Then we're also going to take and use Takedown Charge, so that we get additional intrinsic energy when we use takedowns. Since we're going to be focusing on trying to get a lot of those too to generate those heroic orbs, this is a good way to keep your character in overcharged. We're also going to use Honed Force in order to reduce the cost of the intrinsic energy in Odin Force. This is essential, as while you can also increase the amount of energy you have, this will slow down when you're in overcharge, so you don't leave overcharged as quickly. Because even if you increase your amount of intrinsic energy, it's still going to decrease at the same rate, and it does not increase the amount of overcharge. So we really want to focus on slowing down how quickly we leave that state. Now we're going to focus on the intrinsic overcharge to increase the max damage we can do to these characters. So we're going to start off by using Lightning Field, and while you're overcharged, characters around you are just going to be hit by lightning. This is great because it can stagger them, it can get them away, it increases the stun damage done to them as well as the shock damage. And then we're also going to use Charged Heroic so that your overcharge charges faster to get you in that state quickly. If you can couple this with gear, which really does increase the amount of intrinsic energy you get from hitting people, you'll be an overcharged most of the time you're playing. And then, just to increase damage, we're going to go with Damage Force to increase the total damage we're doing by 15% to everyone while we're in that overcharged state. We're going to switch on over to gear now and look at the different pieces I have equipped on my Thor to make sure he's doing all of that shock damage I talked about and generating enough heroic orbs and energy to keep him going. We're also going to see what I do to make sure he has enough defense so that when you're playing solos, you can also survive on your own. Starting out, I have the Gauntlets of Asgardian Scion. Here we're looking at two different buffs to his shock damage. The electrical accelerations, which gives his signature attacks, such as spinning the hammer and hitting people, shock damage. I use that a lot and it really drains characters' health super fast. And then we're also applying it to his heavy attacks in order to give them shock damage as well. I mentioned this one earlier, but Odin's Flight is something I think helps out a ton to keep you in overcharged status, because while you're flying, you're able to increase your Odin Force intrinsic energy by 30%. Moving on, we're going to look at the ranged gear I have equipped. Everything else I have throughout here is going to be actually epic gear instead of legendary or exotic. That way you know it's not too much of a grind to get this, but you're still going to have great stats and buffs in order to make sure Thor can really help carry your team. Looking at here, it has Valor and Resilience both at 52. We're making sure that we get good health and defense going into these so that you can stand by yourself. You're also going to get the Adept Inspiration, Pim's Blessing, and Expert Buff. Looking at these, you're going to see that you can get a little bit of health back from Adept Inspiration if you get a critical hit, and then you're also going to get some extra particle damage from Pim's Blessing. Particle damage, it can be replaced. I would prefer to have shock damage right there, because if you're able to hit someone with enough shock damage and put them in that status effect, you're going to get higher critical damage on them as well as shock damage itself. And then last we have Expert Buff, which is giving you a chance to get a damage buff if you kill a pinned enemy. This is really why we have it on there, because if you can kill a pinned enemy and get that damage buff, it applies to all your heroics as well, and using them you're going to have a much higher chance of one-shotting people using your assault and then getting a lot more of your heroic energy back. Looking at the armor gear we have equipped, we have the Reactive Protective Breastplate. And why we have this one equipped is because it's giving us 3 different stats. We're getting the proficiency, which is going to increase our chance of different effects from our gear taking place, and our critical hit rate. We're also got the resilience for the defense and status resistance, and then also the precision for the ranged attack rating and slightly melee attack rating. This is just going to help us overall with our stats. And then it's also going to give us a big defense bonus that not necessarily is put into our defense rating. I'm talking about here with the 3 gear perks. We have the Reactive Protection, which is a chance of a defense buff every time we take damage. The Vital Protection, if we revive a teammate, there's a really good chance, about 40%, that we're going to get a defense buff. And then also Aim Guard, so when you're aiming your hammer, you just minus 11% damage altogether. This will help keep you alive very well. Last, here on the left side, we have the Heroic Gear, and this one is going to be pretty vital to making sure you get that heroic energy. Starting out for the perks, we have the increased damage from consecutive mid-air melee attacks. I already have another piece of gear on in my exotics, which is going to give me more Odin Force intrinsic energy for flying in the air. So now that, coupled with me having this, is going to increase the damage on it and keep me in that overcharge status. Then we also have the Support Spark, which is basically if we use our support skill, the Warrior's Fury, we have a 22% chance we're going to get another heroic energy burst using that, and go ahead and charge that one up quite a bit. And it applies to all of your different heroic skills. The last skill we have on that is the Rampage Spark, where if you defeat 3 enemies in rapid succession, it gives you a heroic energy charge burst. This is super helpful with his assault special, where you're going to launch all those characters, get a lot of energy back from using it, and then you're also going to get energy back for killing 3 of them at the same time. As I've mentioned 1,000 times, the key to making Thor just stay amazing is to keep using his different skills. And that's why the major artifact we're going with is actually Darkhold. This one gives you a different set of skills you can do depending on what your health and your heroic energy is at. But if you have full health and you've used all your skills, pressing L3 and R3 on the PlayStation is going to drop your health, but it's going to also recharge all of your skills completely. If you use Warrior's Fury and then you use this skill and get it all back, you're going to basically be invulnerable while you're doing it, and then you'll have plenty of chance to get more health as you continue to play. But you'll stay in that Warrior's Fury, and when it runs out, you'll be able to use it quickly again. When we move down here to the minor artifacts, we're looking at the 2 I have equipped, and we're focusing more on the stats with these ones to make sure that I can keep my character going. The perks are alright, but they're more support perks, and they're not going to directly attribute to the damage you're doing. Looking at the first one, we have the Norn Stone of Clarity, and I have this one with Precision and Might because I want to increase my melee damage and my range damage. And then I also have the nice little bonuses of specifically the Apex Breaker, where I get 13.3 increased damage for my signature attacks. I already mentioned earlier I do a lot of spinning the hammer around with Thor, so that really does increase the damage, and I get shock damage from that as well for one of my other gear pieces, so it really drains the health off those enemies. I also have the Norn Stone of Justice to give me Valor and Precision. This is why my range rating is so high, is because I have another piece on here with 60, giving my range more damage, and the Valor for the health and the defense. Dauntless Boon is a good perk for this one because if you're using Warrior's Fury and staying up close, if you evade out of the way, you can quickly go back in for a hit with increased critical attack chance. Also, when you're sprinting and you use his power attack and he does the flip to pick up his hammer, You do a lot of damage with that attack normally, and this one will also increase that damage. But really we're focusing there on the different stat bonuses it gives, because I feel like those ones are important for this. Now let's look at this build in action and see how much damage it really does and how well it survives. We're going to look at this defeat the enemy elite squad mission here from an elite hive to show you how quickly we're able to take out an entire squad and what are the best methods for doing so. Quickly running in, you can see that I use the Warrior's Fury to increase all my damage and keep enemies off me while I can use my other skills. And then I start using the assault special God Blast in order to launch them all and start charging all my skills again, and then immediately transfer into the Bifrost to get all of that damage in there since everyone's already been frozen around me using the last two skills. When I find that it's safe and there's not anyone around me who's really going to give me damage, I quickly use my Darkhold again to get all my skills back, and then use them once again to drain the health of everyone around me. As you can see, I took out 4 of the 5 villains very quickly. The only reason the 5th one wasn't taken out so quickly is just because he was hiding in a corner. Sometimes that's how the game works out, but using all of the AOE and shock damage from these skills quickly took them out without ever really having a real chance of dying, even when I used Darkhold and it dropped my health. If you found this video to be helpful to you guys, you're doing me a huge favor if you like and subscribe. I appreciate all the support I can get, and I really do enjoy making these videos for you, so leave me something in the comments here. If there's something you want to see, if you have a question about this video, or if you have something you want me to take a look at, just let me know. Drop it down in the comments and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. With that, I'll leave you guys all with a good day.